All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order the March 10th, 2025 Board of Health, Saugus Board of Health meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. First order of business is to review the minutes. I take it everybody got to review them, my colleagues. Does anybody have anything to add, change, amend? Everybody in agreement? Somebody like
Motion to accept?
I will second. Okay, thank you. Second, motion to pass. Everybody in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any? Okay, so motion to pass to review, to accept the minutes as written for last meeting. You have a copy of those?
Yeah, well, anyone.
Anyone's? Okay, I'll sign these. Okay. Thank you. Get a pen to work. Okay.
I know, mine's not.
3, 10. Okay, that's 10. Right. Second order of business is to review amendments to Article 10, keeping of animals. We're going to open it up for a quick public meeting for our town code, Article 10, keeping of animals. If anybody didn't get one of these, this is the highlighted sections that we would like to go over as far as what we're covering tonight and what we're amending. The highlighted in yellow is what we're looking at. What we're looking at proposing to change in the current article, which is Article number 10. So currently, there's no change in the licensing, which is Section 1.
I can talk a little bit.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I can go over it a little bit. So,
Thank you.
Just as a little bit of a preface. So, under MGL 111, 122. Boards of health are allowed to promulgate, reasonable regulations that pertain to public health. So, in looking through some of our regulations, one of the major standouts that I did see when we were redrafting was just that Article 10 didn't have any real enforcement actions, and the actual language in the regulation itself was just, it was a little bit unclear, and it kind of lacked the teeth that we needed to actually perform enforcement regarding some of the stuff. So, we have run into a couple of situations where there have been roosters on properties. We've indicated that, obviously they're nuisance animals and there's not a real way to regulate the population of chickens, when you do introduce a rooster into a coop. So, and looking through some of the neighboring towns, regulations, that's a very common occurrence that roosters are labeled as nuisance animals, as well as, other nuisance animals that we would deem. So just as far as the actual regulation itself, we've just added a few different sections. So we cleaned it up as far as labeling the sections, as far as licensing and structures and swine and goats, as well as the, the nuisance animals and pest control, and then, of course, the enforcement aspect of it. So just to go through it a little bit. So in going through, obviously you'll see in the regulation that in the highlighted areas, there's some new language, for the structures. And basically that was just to basically say that, anybody that is going to have a coop on their property, we're just asking that, this is common sense stuff. So all we're doing is we're asking that they integrate what's called an integrated pest management program, which basically means that you're cleaning up after your animals, you're keeping the area in a sanitary condition at all times, and it's going to be subject to annual inspection from the Board of Health and its animal inspector. As far as all the other, major things that we're doing with this amended regulation. So, again, we're adding the Section 4, which is nuisance animals, and again, roosters shall not be permitted within town limits. And again, it's going to be any animals deemed to be a nuisance or detrimental to the health and well-being of the public shall be ordered removed by the Saugus Board of Health. And, obviously that's kind of a vague, regulation, but at the same time, what we're really talking about is we just want to make sure that no one's trying to keep a bobcat or a giraffe or something like that. So it's just something like, that we're just throwing in there as a little bit, cast a wider net as far as enforcement is concerned. under
You
section
have to
5.
define a nuisance animal.
What's that?
How do you define a nuisance animal?
Is it causing a nuisance? Does it smell? Is it making noise? You know, that kind of stuff.
So a rooster is a nuisance animal because he makes noise.
Noise, yeah.
Correct.
Just how much
How
noise
about-
does
how
a
about
rooster make?
dogs?
I mean, it's a, you know, I mean,
It's a-
I've never lived near one. Are they noisy?
Yeah,
Dogs
first thing
are.
in the morning.
What's that?
Dogs are noisy.
I'm asking
They make
you,
more
how
noise than
noisy is a
roosters.
rooster?
I don't have a rooster, but it
Okay, I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
I never lived
Just
with a
the
rooster, so I don't know.
principle.
Is it once in the morning? I know what I watch on Green Acres. Rooster crows in the morning and that's it. Do they do more?
no, I mean, it's a, you know, I mean, in my experience anyway, you know, when I visited these places that have had roosters that are, you know, that people are complaining about, it's typically, you know, I'll go out there and it'll be the middle of the day, and that's just, you know, the sounds that they make. It's just, it's a loud crowing, it's a rooster sound, you know what I mean?
The-
So,
Analogous to a dog barking?
what's that?
Like a dog barking?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit more than that, I would say. I mean, obviously,
I would think a dog is worse than a rooster.
Well, if a dog is barking in your neighborhood.
We
you
also have an
can-
animal control
You can
officer
have an
that takes care of
an animal control officer, you can make a complaint, and they will, if there's enough complaints, there will be
So how
something
many
done.
complaints have we had about roosters in the town?
since I've been here, probably about 10.
Yeah.
How many
The
dogs
the
have
other
you
thing,
complained
the
about?
other thing I want to interject about the rooster is the nuisance can come into play as they will make more chickens. And we want to put a limit
Yeah,
on.
there is a limit on the chickens, though. You said
Right,
there's 6
but
now.
you can't, it's very difficult to control that if you're allowing somebody to have a rooster with the chickens. And it gets out of hand.
Inspection every year, and, they're supposed to have 6, and then
This
the
is the-
license, they have to come in if they have any.
A lot of,
extra chickens,
we're
they have to
just,
pay
we're
extra.
modeling after other cities that have the rooster.
And I understand the argument.
It's,
I know.
I don't have a
it's a,
rooster.
it's a,
Sure, no,
it's a
and I get
valid
it.
argument.
It's just
Yes, the
more,
principle there.
well,
was
so
saying
put it
you're
this
gonna-
way, it's
you're
more,
gonna
it's
say,
more of a
hey, you can have a
situation,
rooster.
sure, no,
If
so
somebody wants a
so it's more of a
rooster-
situation where, say there is a nuisance dog that's barking all the time.
You have-
You have teeth to be able to call the animal control officer, turn
Absolutely.
around and go, hey, listen, you
Yeah,
have to
then
bring
you
that
have
dog
bad
in.
neighbors, you know?
You know what I mean?
Well, I know.
mean, and that's
You
ultimately,
create the problems.
that's what it ends up becoming, you know what I mean? So ultimately, like I said, we just want to have some teeth for enforcement, you know, because again, there's no way for us to regulate a population of animals if you are dealing with, you know, a situation where you have a roost of chickens and then you have a rooster coming in to, you know, to fertilize all the eggs. I mean, because ultimately you have 7 or 8 chickens in a coop, and you're talking about a dozen eggs a day, you know what I mean? So all of a sudden, and we've seen this, you know, in years past, where all of a sudden where our, you know, animal permit holders are coming in and asking for, you know, bigger permits because they have more chickens all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
you have a limit on that now already, right?
Sure, there's the limit, but the problem with having, the nuisance with having the rooster is you run into a problem because now the chickens are alive and they're,
Well, not only
many
that,
of
but I
them.
mean, roosters can tend to be territorial, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes they can go into a coop and they'll kill, you know what I mean?
They'll
And ultimately, you know, what we want to do is, again, you know, we've had enough complaint at the Board of Health office to turn around and go, okay, well, we don't have, you know, what we were doing before was we were citing MGL 111, 133, which is the nuisance reg for the state. And, you know, that basically indicates that, listen, anything that's, you know, proposing a nuisance or injurious to public health or what have you, which is, you know, noise can be considered that. So, you know, it was, you know, with this regulation, all we're trying to do is, like I said, add some teeth to our enforcement options. So basically, we can turn around and go, listen, you're not allowed to have a rooster, you're allowed to have, you know, whatever the cap is for chickens, but at the same time, we have no way of governing whether or not you're, you know, making more of them and selling them. I mean, it's just, there's way too many, you know, intangibles there that we're trying to just kind of to buckle down on. So like I said, I mean, it's akin to a barking dog. That certainly, you know, you make that analogy, and it's certainly, you know,
Well, we got a lot more dogs than we
it
have.
plays out, sure, no, absolutely. But again, at the same time, you know, there is a permanent, well, there's a permanent requirement for dogs as well. And,
Well,
you
I
know,
understand that, but it's a
yeah.
little bit different.
No, and I get it. I understand what you're saying,
Yeah, I mean,
so.
we're singling out a rooster though, you know, as compared to other animals.
Sure, no, I mean,
Yeah,
I
it's a
get it, you know what I mean? But like, put it this way, you look across the state and it's outside of the, you know, as soon as you get outside the 495 belt and you go into the rural areas of Massachusetts, you're talking about, there are bans on these animals across the state. So it's not like it's an unprecedented thing. So, you know, again, we're just kind of mimicking
No
the.
problem, it's okay.
No, I mean, hey,
Oh, no, no,
we
just
want to
want-
be able to, you know, we want to be able to explain what we're
explain,
doing
yeah.
here as well. You know what I mean? It's not something that we're just saying, oh, you know what, roosters, you know, you're out. You know what I mean? There's a basis for it,
Well,
so.
don't you think also with the price of eggs, people might be coming, getting more roosters to make more eggs.
Of course,
right?
no, of course, I mean, and ultimately, again, you do have a situation now with,
Chickens maybe, I don't know about more eggs.
well, but at the same time, you do run into the situation where, it's obviously, not out of left field, but it is certainly on the back burner, but avian flu and
Absolutely, that was what I was
H5N1, you do run the risk of, populating a roost of chickens that can, could, effectively affect some other, animals. So we just, like I said, we're just trying to cut down on that. And, it's not like we're trying to target any specific animal. It's just, we've had enough instances here where we're trying to just make sure that we have some teeth to tell them that they have to get rid of them. You know what I mean? So put it this way, we wouldn't turn around and tell somebody to get rid of their dog, Ben, I understand that that's the analogy you're trying to make, but it's a little bit different just because we're dealing with a different type of animal.
Is every rooster a nuisance?
What's that?
Is every rooster a nuisance?
I would consider it a nuisance, yes.
Yes.
Well, so it has to do also, I believe, with the fact that we're not rural. It's not a rural area.
Not rural anymore.
It's not rural anymore, it used to be.
And honestly, in my experience too, when I was the agent in Stoneham, we ran into a lot of situations where folks were trying to keep animals and they would, adamantly deny that they have like roosters and stuff. And, you go back to the same property 3 and 4 times and suddenly there's just, you're talking about a multiplication, you're talking about exponential growth of these, of the population of chickens they have. And they'll turn around and say, well, no, we don't have a rooster. And then around it comes, bah, you know what I mean? And it's just like,
Could you do that again?
So that's what we're talking about.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they certainly are, I would consider to be, especially given the, all the.
Yeah, but how many incidents have you had here in Saugus for that?
And so, like I said, since I've been here, so probably twice a year, we'll get a call about a rooster, and that's, I would
I don't think you
consider that
many
enough.
roosters here anyways in the south.
Well, you would have,
You got 2 or 3?
well, like I
One?
said, you get,
I've heard one, that's it.
probably 2 a year, we get as far as complaints are concerned. So it's not a huge problem, I mean, I understand the principles of just, of trying to, regulate something that's not really over the top, you know what I mean? But it's at the same time, we're just, again, trying to shore up our regulations, especially now that folks are gonna start opening their windows and, sound's gonna carry a little bit more, so we're just trying to make sure that we have a way to fix that.
How, maybe this is first year biology or something, how quickly don't people pick their eggs every day?
Sure.
So how does that,
Well,
Make it
I mean,
difficult to control
as
your
far as,
population.
as far as the biology of a chicken and an egg, I'm not really
Yeah.
gonna be able to speak to that.
I don't know either.
Some people may want to keep a rooster so they can propagate, because, chickens do die off or they eat them after.
Oh, sure. And, I mean, that's
Instead of
the.
going out and buying other chickens, which you might get a rooster.
No, sure, and I
You know what I'm
understand.
saying? That's what happens. That's
Yeah.
how people get.
Well, and that's what ultimately happens anyway, is that's the, folks who go
What
and get a
happens, the
rooster.
rooster ends up in the pot.
Well, I hear they're not that good.
Oh, well.
All right, that's enough.
Okay.
So,
All right,
so
moving
anyways,
on.
so as far as what I was talking about before, so again, roosters and nuisance animals, we added for section 4. For section 5, all of our permit holders are going to be required to employ, now when I say reasonable pest control, so obviously, we get a lot of different rodent complaints here in town.
Pest control now. The inspector came by, and he said, a couple of years ago, right? It was 2 years ago they started, so you were supposed to have somebody come down and bait for animals, bait for brats. And so we trying to do, attract them, like baiting for them.
Well, see, so, and the reason why we put a section in like this to this regulation is just because for the majority of complaints.
draws them.
Well, put it this way, I mean, but that in and of itself, what you're talking about is, every rodent complaint that we get has been within like a half a mile, within a certain distance from a licensed chicken coop that we have in town. And so again, you look at the number of complaints that we get regarding rodents, and it's ultimately something that we look at and go, well, okay, well, there's a chicken coop next street over, right? There's a chicken coop a quarter mile away down the street. So these are the kind of things that, obviously any type of animal activity is going to attract rodents in general, just because of feces, just because of the spilled feed, just because of all the, the things that go into keeping animals. That's essentially what's going to attract, rodents. So, I mean, ultimately we see, like I said, when I say reasonable pest control, that doesn't necessarily mean that I want you to be throwing, a poison down. What I'm talking about is, you
You gotta
can.
keep it clean.
Sure, you can, well, and that's what I meant by an integrated pest management program. Basically saying, okay, well, we're gonna clean this up every day, we're gonna keep the water clean, we're gonna keep the feed off the ground.
Contract with a pest management.
No, and, and when like I said, well, you know what, and
$500 to have
Sure.
$10 worth of eggs.
No, of course not. I mean, and ultimately, you go down to, some of these complaints that I go out to, that'll be the question. Is, well, what do you mean I don't want to have to call a pet? I mean, but you have to understand, you go down to like Home Depot and like these Tomcat boxes and all these, over-the-counter pest control methods, they're all the same type of stuff. It's just on a smaller scale. So that also can be considered reasonable pest control. But ultimately, what we don't want is situations that we've seen where you have people turning around when we go down and say, well, there's rodents running around. You have burrows here, you have burrows there. And what they would turn around and do is basically take, you have granulated, bromatolone, which is a rodenticide, right? And you'll break the thing open and just kind of sow the ground with it. And that's, obviously not something that we're looking to do either, because, there's a reason why we say reasonable, right? That's basically what I'm trying to say, is that ultimately you go down to, get a bait box, for mice and rodents, for mice and rats, and you clean up after yourself, you won't be dealing with situations like this. It's the negligent factor that we're really looking to make sure we're cutting down on. That's why we also have the enforcement action, which is basically to go down and say, well, you have rat burrows all over your house. And so what's the next step? Like, how are you going to get rid of them? Because now you're talking about an infestation, you're talking about a public nuisance that we're now going to have to make sure that you rectify. So ultimately you turn around and say, okay, you have, it's like, okay, we'll give you some time to square it away, but if you just try to, if you flat out don't comply, then we have the ability to cite you for it, under this regulation. So again, like I said, the regulation as it was written just didn't have enough teeth as far as enforcement is concerned, and that's what we're doing here. So, ultimately, again, we've got these amendments here. What I would recommend, Madam Chair, is that we open up a public comment period in which, all permit holders, all members of the public can submit comments to us prior to making a definitive decision next month. I would recommend that we have another public hearing next month to actually vote on this regulation, at which point, again, we can take whatever into consideration from the public that we would get, and I think that as far as putting this into effect, I would say that it goes into effect immediately, prior to the warmer months coming.
So, do we all?
Well, I have a
question.
comment. I don't know
Okay.
anything about swine
Yeah.
or
Oh, sure. No, that's
But
okay.
Just some things, they're almost like gutches in here.
Yeah.
Like a cement trough. I went out to the Tractor Supply, and they have plastic trough, they have galvanized, they have steel. I didn't see any cement troughs.
So,
Why are there words like that in there?
because I didn't write this regulation.
that's
So,
right.
so essentially what we're doing right now is, like I said, we're adding some elements to this regulation in order to, better enforce, again, it's more a nuisance factor than anything that we're dealing with right
Yeah,
now.
but when
So
you
we
put
haven't really dove into some of the, the nitty gritty of
It just seems
of
when
the
you put
language.
something like that, that's a gotcha.
No, sure.
You can do everything else, but the neighbor doesn't like it.
Well, it's the same thing with like, okay, if you have a goat or a pig, then
Right.
you have to paint it twice a year.
Well, that's bizarre.
You know what I mean? So like I said,
Except
we
it
haven't
doesn't even say
really
paint.
got into, subtraction.
Yeah,
Right
'cause it
now
says
we're talking about
whitewash.
addition.
What if you have a red barn?
Well, because exactly. You know what I mean? What we're talking about is a very small regulation, which is the whole reason why we decided to add a couple of sections to it. At which point, we can reassess. We'll meet with our animal inspector, and we'll talk with, the powers that be
Okay,
about.
so we're not ready to enact this. It
No,
just seems
no,
a
no,
legal
no, no, no.
document can't have that many gotchas in there.
No, sure. I mean, and again, what we're talking about is the amendments are only in additions. We're not talking about sweeping through the whole thing just yet.
It says 50 feet from the dwelling. Does that include your own dwelling?
Oh, sure, yes.
It has to be 50 feet away from
Correct.
your own house.
Correct, yes.
And then it says the pens can't be within 150 feet of a road. Lots in Saugus are 100 by 100.
For goats and pigs.
That's not a change, though, that's the existing.
This is the.
That's existing?
Yes, so I mean,
This is all
everything
Yeah.
that's in yellow is,
It's
everything
changed.
is,
Only thing changed
the only
was-
additions are in yellow. Everything else is existing.
So
So,
if you have a 100 by 100 lot, and you
You're not
you have a
having
little
chicken.
pen, you can't have a goat?
Then you're not having-
No,
no.
And you permit, we permit, what's the
Yeah.
process for getting a permit?
for a goat?
I think you
For
go
an animal.
before the time.
No, so I mean, so put it this way, I mean, we would get an application for, so just use chickens for an example. So we would get a permit application for chickens, at which point we would go out to the property and assess whether or not, you meet the setback requirements for your outbuilding, and then ultimately, I mean, as long as, obviously, because that's the main, beef of this regulation as it stands, you know, you're meeting the requirements. And again, you know, that's the whole reason why, you know, you look at a regulation like this and you immediately go, okay, well, there's not really a whole lot. I mean, you're talking about 5 bullet points for an entire animal regulation. I mean,
Right.
you know, put it this way, as far as other, you know, municipalities' animal regulations, you're talking about 3 and 4 pages worth of, you know, of text, you know. I mean, so again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to expand it enough so that we can retract some of the stuff. So, I mean, it starts with,
Okay, so
you
this
know,
is not the thing we're voting on.
no, not right now, no. So, I mean, what we'd be doing is voting on the amendments next month, if we were to, you know.
Now, let me play devil's advocate here for a minute.
Sure.
Now, you can have dogs in your house, you can have them in your bed,
Mhm.
okay? They don't have to be 150 feet away. Somebody wants to have a little goat, he's gotta be 150 feet. And is the goat any dirtier than the dog?
Well, that's to say, if you were gonna keep it outside.
I mean,
I mean, that's.
so if you wanna keep your dog outside, he's gotta be 150 feet from the house?
Oh, no.
In terms of, can I just say, in terms of like, so I'm the public health nurse, there's so much communicable disease that can spread
Yeah.
between animals and
So what's
humans
the
that
difference between a
we
dog and
have
an
to
animal, isn't
have
it? A cat's an
some
animal.
sort of regulation for animals that are kept outside, that are exposed to all the elements 24 hours in the day.
So if you take
Whereas
the goat-
dogs.
No,
Okay.
not only that, but you are talking about a domesticated animal
Yeah,
versus a farm
your
animal.
dog is domestic.
You know, so I mean, it is kind of apples to
Dog.
oranges, which and I get it. Put it this way, there's been, hey, there's been instances
Okay,
where
we
you're
had goats,
talking.
we had everything, right?
Sure, no, I mean, so I mean, put it this way, like, there's been instances where folks want to keep a potbelly pig, where they want to keep a goat, you know what I mean? And so, what this regulation would be pertaining to is just the idea that you have an outbuilding for swine or goats. And that's why, you know, I mean, again, it's, for whatever reason, when it was written, these are the differences between a chicken coop and a, you know, a swine pen. So, I mean, ultimately, again, you know, I mean, hey, it is what it is at this point. Like I said, we're just trying to add some teeth to this reg, and, you know, I mean,
And what's your possibility?
Pigs, yeah.
And
Yeah.
a dog is inside most of the day. as
Sure.
opposed to-
Not necessarily.
Well, I mean, they're
It all
not kept
depends on the
outside
size of the dog.
overnight.
It's a little tiny
and,
dog, yeah, they
yeah,
keep them inside.
but overnight, they're not being kept
do
outside.
you have a question, sir?
I just want to say, I have a farm, you know, it's the Good Egg Farm in Saugus. But anyway, I've dealt with rats since I was a little kid, okay? This is how the rats go, okay? So you can you can have like whatever you want, like an apartment building, let's say, okay? If you get the pesticide guy there to go over there and put some of those bait stations you're talking about, there's a lot of rats, that'll be gone in 3 days.
Sure.
Now, they come back every month or so, right? They got 3 weeks to multiply, because you didn't get all the rats.
Sure.
You just ate up that little bit of bait. You gotta continuously hit that bait. And
Sure.
the thing's empty, and you got no more rat population.
Sure, no, I mean, hey, we deal with it, we deal with it across the town.
But another thing is, see all these apartment buildings?
Sure.
They have like a dumpster, right? It's full of food, right? So those rats, they're gonna go right in there, and they're gonna multiply just right out of that, no matter how much I poison it over there.
Sure.
Because the whole town is gonna be responsible for, you know, what they do with their rubbish, you know?
Sure.
I've been picking rubbish up for all day today, because it blew all over the town. But there's so much food around, and everybody, you know, you get people, they eat half the food and throw the rest of it away.
Okay.
And the rats populate on that.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what I mean? And again, you know, and obviously, you know, we have enough rodent complaints.
Could be
to
another article.
Well, so there you go. You know, I mean, ultimately, like I said, you know, and what I'm going to do is I'll give, you know, and I'll put it out for everybody, but I'll put my email address out, and I'll collect all the public comments over the next couple of weeks, and we'll take that all into consideration. Like I said, I mean, this is the preliminary part of getting, you know, amendments into a
That's a good
regulation.
idea.
You know, I mean, because ultimately, so then that's another thing that I mean by reasonable pest control. Because again, if you have a huge population of rodents that are constantly attacking your bait boxes, and it's like, okay, well, now they're in my dumpster, now they're here, now they're there. You know, we deal with it up, you know, at the pig farm, you know, and it's like, you know, there's a big pile of slop there, you know what I mean? So it's just like, okay, you know, so when I say reasonable, I mean reasonable enough to take care of whatever problems are associated with that particular complaint that we have,
definitely.
you know? So like I said, I mean, we definitely appreciate the feedback, and that's why we'll have this.
And that's how you're gonna get them.
Oh, yeah, oh, definitely. And I mean, put it this way, I've been out on enough phone calls to know that, I mean, it's more than just, you know, putting a trap out there, you know?
You gotta hit that all the time.
I don't think there's any perfect answer.
No, there wouldn't be.
You
I
know,
mean,
there just isn't. You
I mean,
know,
and
it's
again,
nature.
you know, I mean, when you talk about
So there's the food supply, they're gonna be rats.
Yeah.
And we can't possibly eliminate, eradicate every food supply. We can do our best.
No,
and
that's
we
it.
need cooperation from all the citizens. It's not per se the town or the Board of Health's, total responsibility, although we're trying to educate and we're trying to do our best, certainly with the city, town's properties, but,
This is what the rats will do. Say you put your say you have a house right here, and you put your rubbish over there all the time, right? They're gonna burrow.
oh, we know.
into the ground right
Yeah.
there
Oh, yeah.
With
Oh,
that, with that trash bucket, because they know there's food there all the
I
time.
know.
So no matter if it's, chicken coops or, horse things, wherever there's food, they're gonna,
Well, and it's a perfect opportunity for us to kind of re-stress the fact that the town has an IPM, the Integrated Pest Management Program that we put in place when I got here. It's, again, every resident is going to be required, to police their own property.
Exactly.
We deal with situations all the time where we have, folks that are just putting their trash out and letting it fall over and blow all over the place. Again, what we're talking about is, you're keeping your, and when I say, feed spillage and things like that, we deal with, bird feeders spilling over all the time and that causing a rodent problem. We deal with trash, that causes a rodent problem, food scraps and what have you. And it's a matter of making sure that folks know what the real procedure is for getting rid of rodents. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, in all these holistic medicine, all these holistic methods and homeopathic methods that you're talking about for as far as, treating for a rodent infestation, it just doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like,
So you can poison rodents.
Sure. It's the only real way to get rid of them.
So you can poison squirrels.
Well, the reason,
Rodents,
so when you treat for a rodent, right, you're talking about a tamper-proof, and so bromatolone, right, the little ingots that you put into a rat trap, as far,
So if the rodents get in there, they eat.
they have a pheromone.
They go and die somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And coyotes get them, the coyotes die. It's a vicious cycle.
Right.
Well, at the same time, I actually did some research on that particular
won't kill the
aspect of.
coyote.
Yeah, what you're talking about is.
Okay.
It won't because of the
So, okay.
amount of ounces
Not
in
enough
that
in it.
poison to kill a coyote.
It's called-
like
so
50 pounds. It's not.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is called at least,
I don't have a rat.
it's called an LD50, right? So an LD50 is basically what says, okay, as soon as like however much, any given animal can consume without passing, right? So an LD50 is like basically you go past the point of no return as far as how much you ingest
eat a
it.
coyote.
What you're
Yeah,
talking
eat a lot
about
of
as far as, a rat dies and an eagle comes and gets it, or a rat dies and a coyote comes and gets it, a rat dies, a cat comes and gets it, a dog comes and gets it. What you would be required to do, what that dog or cat or coyote or whatever animal would be required to do. You gotta understand, a very minuscule aspect of that rodenticide is what's gonna kill a rat. So you would need literally like a pile of rats, like 100 pounds of rats in a pile in order to kill, a cat or a dog or what have you. And again,
According
that's,
to him, you gotta keep feeding them all the time, the rats.
if you got a rat problem.
well, you treat an
We're not
active
killing the same
infestation.
one.
You're not
You just
ki-
treat an
yeah.
active
All right,
infestation.
sorry.
No, and that's
No,
okay. Hey,
it's a
this
point.
is constructive.
Because my dog
It's
ate a bunch of
constructive
rat
dialogue. It
poison.
is because
Yeah.
everybody
Well,
everybody does want to know.
They said.
It's the job of the public health department to educate to educate people, right? To educate the town. And the thing is, everybody seems to get upset that, the health department or the town themselves aren't doing anything about the rats, right? And we're trying our best. However, I can't stress enough that each homeowner or each person who lives here has to have the responsibility to be responsible with their trash. Cover the trash, wait, when the barrels go out the night before, keep them secure. Don't, pick up after your dogs. The
Yeah.
dog feces.
That's a huge
Huge
I mean,
issue,
we're dealing with that on Central Street right now. I
right?
mean, it's
So,
a-
there are things that we all can do by ourselves, independently, to help with the rodent problem, the rats in Saugus. So that's something to be really mindful of and help ourselves, help you, help me.
Mm-hmm.
So help me, help you. So,
Where
and
is Saugus infestated with rats?
there's many
Just
places.
wondering that, because I don't see them around around our area, I haven't seen any.
You have to look at it from a regional.
Yeah, it's
perspective, okay?
exactly, it's townwide
Yeah, I
where
mean-
the issues are.
Yeah, well, it's not even that it fluctuates. I mean, and it's not even like more. Some towns are worse than others. ultimately what you're talking about is a major northeasterly problem. You know, you have to remember, we're within 5 miles of Boston right now, and Boston has the oldest infrastructure in the entire country. And ultimately what you're talking about there is, you know, you hear about the New York subway rats and what have you. Boston is just as bad. You know what I mean? So ultimately, again, you're talking about a northeasterly issue that is directly associated with the fact that it's like 250 years old. What's that?
About Resco over there, makes the situation over there.
Well, I mean, we're talking about this right now. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, again,
So I guess to kind of wrap it back into the,
you go. come on, Madam Chair. Where's that gavel?
we gotta, I always wanted to do that. No more questions from you, no.
Sir, it's 100% constructive dialogue. So
Yeah.
I don't want you to.
No, we're teasing. The thing is, I just want to kind of get back to the original agenda item that we were working on. To echo what Director John has said. This is what we're going to work at. I want everybody to understand, especially to, you know, my colleagues, that this was an older regulation article. It will be tweaked. The only things we're concerned with right now is the nuisance animal and the rooster. I feel bad for the roosters too. I mean,
It just
I
seems
really
like a
do.
signal.
We're picking on the roosters, I'm telling you. And I don't disagree that dogs are noisy
Well, you
too.
know, I mean, and that poses the
But-
question of what constitutes a nuisance animal
Right,
as well. I mean,
so
we do get territorial.
we're honestly not prejudiced against roosters here. We love all winged animals, ducks, roosters, chickens, hens, whatever you want to call them. But
They're in the pool though, right?
this has, okay, all right.
In the street.
No, but people with their chickens out in the yard eat the bugs.
Okay, discussion's up here. So what we're trying to do is model what other towns and cities have done with roosters, chickens, and whatnot. So this is how it's gonna stand. Any questions that anybody has, we are going to institute this as it is.
So,
Once we have our, we're gonna open it up for questions. Email questions to John, and at the next meeting, we'll have answers to questions, but this has to be addressed,
Yeah.
so that we have teeth to bite
So what
into.
we'll do, Madam Chair, is, so once we'll do a roll, I would say that we
Okay.
do
I'm sorry.
I'd like to propose a motion. Okay,
we do like a roll call vote.
Yeah, we will.
Just
But
a
I was just trying to-
What do we,
I've watched.
roll call vote to open up a public comment period, I would say.
well, that's what
Yeah.
I'll propose a motion.
Go ahead, Tom.
well, I just have a question on basic, I mean, how do you handle manure? I don't know how much waste chickens create, 6 chickens. So it says you have to
So-
eliminate.
so
what do
put
you
it this way,
got? What do you do with it?
I think that
What, not you, what is done with chickens'
Yeah,
waste?
put it in the garden.
Put it in the compost.
It's literally some of the best
Does it smell?
fertilizer. It's some of the best fertilizer you can.
Does it, I'm just looking for problems. Does it smell?
Well, I mean, it's feces, so.
Yes, it does
So,
green.
sure, but I mean,
Yeah,
it
It just
Green,
seems
so-
interesting what's important and what's not.
no, and I understand what you're saying, Anthony, and ultimately, like I said, the regulation that was in place, right, without the yellow, that's what you're dealing with as far as the entire animal regulation for the entire town. And it was written to try to encompass, again, use of manure, like, I mean, we do have horse stables in town, but, again, what we're talking about is, we have to expand before we can contract because it's too small.
So we don't comment on anything that's not highlighted.
So, I mean, again, you can comment on anything, but ultimately, whether or not we add and subtract, we would have to have another public hearing for the amendments, and then, kind of perpetuate the situation. So, my initial thought was that we, and again, the board is it's up to you guys as to how you guys want to proceed. I mean, it's just me in the office fielding these complaints going,
Well, I know you're the
we
face,
should, we should probably act on it. So that's why I would recommend it. But,
Question,
yes.
why don't you address these violators? You said you had 2 a year or something like that. Who's these rooster falls? Why don't you deal with them and say, what is their problem? Is they got it, is quiet hours are 10 to 7. Is this in the daytime, you're saying? What are they doing wrong? And
We
why-
don't have anything
What is the
to sink our
violation that they
teeth into.
have offended?
Well, see, like I said, the issue is that we don't have any real way to combat it outside of citing a regulation that is way more in depth than just basically saying that, okay, well, this says you can't have one. You know what I mean? Instead of citing a nuisance regulation where you have to, you know, I mean, it's a state regulation, so it's a little bit more.
We have to
you know,
adopt it.
I mean,
We have to-
again, we're just trying to make it simpler to be able to regulate the,
So we don't, as the Article 10 stands now, we don't have any, like you keep saying.
There's no enforcement.
There's no enforcement in the article. We need to add it. That's what we're doing. So if there's a complaint now, as the board and the director, there's nothing to say, you can't. So that's what this is about. Yep,
But quiet hours are 10 to 7.
right,
We know that.
right.
And if you let whoever has a rooster, if you let them out before 7, you're breaking the law. They have automatic chicken doors, timer, solar panel. You set it to what you want. You can let them out at 8, but as long as he's in there.
Sounds good.
Collectors, roofers, landscapers, they're all out there at 7 o'clock. So.
no, it's a good point.
That is a good point.
People do it, but like.
Yeah, but at the same time,
A
though,
noise in the daytime, well, they have a right to quackle, whatever.
sure.
But they start at 5 o'clock in the morning.
No, but at the same time, though,
That's the chicken door.
well, it begs the other
That
question
is-
of what I was talking about,
It's a
though.
law.
Well, but also what I was talking about is, again, regulating the population of chickens. You know what I mean? That's another part of it.
Then you have, she said a cap on the amount of chickens you have. The rooster only fertilizes the egg.
Yeah.
You want to eat the egg, that's fine. There's nothing that's saying that you're populating your chickens.
Sure.
That's like incubating and wanting more chickens on your property. Well, then you gotta address your permit. You gotta add another buck to each one. I mean, what's the purpose of having a rooster on these ones that you've met? I don't have one, I mean, because I have no use for it, okay?
Well, so there you go.
But I mean, some people want to incubate and raise, it's put on the news that they suggest that you have backyard chickens now. We've seen it a few times.
Well, you know, and again, I'm not here to say that it's not a good, you know, I mean, I'm not here to downplay the value.
I
Sorry.
decided to eliminate the roosters. Did you ever vote on it, townwide, or?
So I mentioned it at one of the last meetings, and I asked the
And
board
who
to.
made the decision, say, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna outlaw roosters now in town? Was that already in existence? All
No, it wasn't.
right, so all of a sudden, we're gonna decide.
It's not voted on yet.
Yeah, again, I mean, this is
So
a,
this is a
yellow.
vote on it after.
Everything
so
in
this is
yellow
this is
is-
a process to promulgate that regulation due
Who's gonna vote
to,
on it?
yeah.
We
Who's
got,
gonna work on it, or just the board?
so we're gonna open it up.
We're gonna-
This is the process. There's always a process when we have to change an article. This is the process and this is the discussion. And then ultimately, the board will vote on it. But
So if the
we're
people-
taking,
If the people want the roosters, the board can say, no, we don't want it.
No, you have to submit your questions to the
Well-
director, and then in a
Yeah, so-
month's time, we're gonna come back.
Being made, like you brought up a good point, somebody wants a rooster, they wanna, propagate, their chickens may die off, they may eat them, instead of going out and buying them, they want a rooster, let them, do their thing over there and raise some more chickens.
and we will take that into consideration. That's what this is all about. We are gonna take all these things into consideration, and then we will decide if this is something that is gonna work for the town. We're not making any decisions now. We're more than
It's that.
willing to have the discussion.
This is something you might want to see.
Sure.
So,
Can bring it
readily
up.
available rooster collars.
Rooster
Keeps the
call.
crow down.
Okay.
Were you aware of that?
You wanna bring it up?
We've made it more than clear that we're not, this is why we're asking for discussion. You guys are the chicken
You gotta be
keepers.
careful, you might tell you
Oh,
too
my
much.
God.
Yeah.
It's just something that you might be interested in
It's just
seeing.
Velcro, that's all. You
Yeah,
put
it's just
it around,
Velcro.
tighten it up.
No crow rooster
And they don't,
collar on
keep it-
Amazon.
They have a hard time
Just like-
swallowing.
Yeah, but is
thank you.
this
No, thank you.
humane?
That's exactly,
That
that's
could
the
be
input.
that might be animal
Really
cruelty.
try.
You know?
I don't know.
Your finger underneath
I
it.
know,
It can open up.
So do we have a motion to open the
Yeah.
comment period, right?
Does somebody want to make a motion to?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to propose a motion to open a public comment period today until our next meeting on April 7th,
Yep.
and solicit
Do you have an extra?
comments on the revisions to Article 10, and hold a public hearing at our next meeting on April 7th.
Okay, I will second to avoid further comment. All in favor?
Aye?
No, it's not me, it's
In favor? Jerry?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passed. We will continue. Please send in your comments.
So my email address
Email?
is available on the Board of Health website at saugusma.gov. And so, again, please, by all means, submit all your comments to me. If you are currently a permit holder, then you should already have our contact information. So if you do have comments regarding this situation, please, by all means, send them in, and then we'll readdress.
Point of information, could I, John, do we have to publish these
During the comment period.
during the comment period?
So this information will be up, and it's J. Freilich at Saugus.
Also, that's right.
Yes, on top of this. So I encourage people, any information you have, please put it in an email. We will take all the comments, questions into consideration. If you hold any weight in this, please come to our next meeting. We will be more than willing to hear and take anything you have. We're not chicken keepers, so we're looking forward to you educating us, okay? Moving on. That was what my predecessor would say. Moving on. Is that the right word, predecessor? I'm so happy to have you, Elliot. Please, come on up. Win waste. Never thought I'd be so happy to see you.
This is a nice change of pace.
Yeah,
We gotta do this every meeting.
yeah. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Director Freilich, and the rest of the board members. Since the last Board of Health meeting on February 3rd, the facility operated at 94% boiler availability, processed just over 41,000 tons, and generated slightly over 22,000 megawatts. The facility had one unscheduled downtime event totaling 7.75 hours and two scheduled downtime events totaling 97.5 hours. Since the last meeting, the facility has shipped 6,685 tons of ash to the Wind Waste Shrewsbury landfill. On the 4th of February, the EPA issued its findings from a 2-day on-site inspection in November of 2024. A notice of violation was issued for 4 administrative findings not related to the operation of the facility. The EPA inspectors identified a drum with a label that did not include all of the required language. They found a vehicle battery had been mislabeled and was not dated. And then the final finding was that the facility's contingency plan had been submitted to Union Hospital in Lynn, which has since closed.
Oh.
The facility corrected all of these administrative issues during the inspection, except for the submittal of the contingency plan, which was done on the 18th of February, and the facility is in full compliance. On the 12th at 6 p.m., the control room received a call asking if there was anything going on at the facility, making any kind of excessive noise. The caller was informed that there was nothing operationally occurring at the facility that would cause noise. Myself and others were actually still at the facility, drove around the area. We couldn't hear anything or identify anything, including driving around the surrounding neighborhoods. On the 15th, the Saugus Fire Department reported to site after receiving 2 alarms from the facility. It was verified there were no issues at the facility. Saugus Fire Department left site shortly thereafter. Continuing to work with Alert Fire, there's a couple outstanding issues that they're helping us with. They're our third-party contractor that we work with them and the Saugus Fire Department on. On the 17th, the facility was performing a routine maintenance operation that led to a smoking condition inside the facility, caused the smoke alarm to go off in the maintenance shop. Facility, we contacted the fire department right away to let them know. They still come, and then shortly after they left, after confirming there were no issues at the facility. On the 20th, there was an unannounced monofill inspection attended by Tech Environmental. The monofill is inspected for proper operation and material handling. The exterior and active face are inspected, covering stormwater controls, ash handling equipment, and site progress. No issues were reported during the inspection, and the monofill was determined to be in full compliance with all permits. Facility did not have any excess emission events or radioactive loads since the last meeting. On a community update in February, had participants at the Valentine's Day luncheon at the Senior Center and the Belle Isle Rotary Polar Plunge, which helped raise funds for fighting polio worldwide. That's all I have for my update.
Did you go in the water?
I didn't have to, no.
Okay, who do you use for, my question is, who do you use for hospital to report?
Melrose Week.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, and that they've been updated?
Yeah, the contingency plan was sent to Melrose.
Great, contingency plan. Any questions from the board for Ally?
Hey, do you mind, I just have a question about your report at the last meeting about the January 9th emergency condition that caused the trip of the turbine and shut everything down. And you reported that it was the cooling water, loss of
Yep.
cooling water that caused the whole problem. What's been done since that time? Have you had any further incidents?
No, no further
on that?
incidents. Like I mentioned, and part of that is, we're a NERC-regulated facility as well, as being part of the grid. So we had to come up with corrective actions for them as well, and it's kind of what I reported out at the last meeting. So when there's any kind of chance of that frazzle ice and that, severe cold weather and anything like that, we're just going to be running the screens in hand. So we put that into our cold weather plan, which is something we have to submit to NERC. And we did submit to them because it was a cold weather event that we tripped off during. So we formally filed that with them, and that's been updated in our plan as well at the facility.
What's the plan for the dredging? And does that impact the cooling structure intake?
It certainly will only help the ability for water to flow. We're still in the permitting process right now. Once we get that through, we can then go, most of the contractors won't bid on it until the permits are officially approved. Once approved, we have 3 years.
Army Corps of Engineers? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ally.
Thank you.
Another welcome site, a public health nurse, Terry. Next on the agenda.
I will not mention chickens or roosters.
No, nothing, no chickens. No avian flu.
Yeah, avian flu.
No flu.
Not even avian flu.
No, don't want to hear anything about that.
So for February 2025, what we saw was we had 16 cases of COVID, which is great, but that also doesn't include the rapid tests. We had 2 cases of tuberculosis, 6 cases of foodborne illness, 2 new cases of tuberculosis, I should say, and I have 5 in the town. 2 cases of Hep C, 4 cases of Hep B, which is all pretty normal. 1 case of pertussis. And what was kind of a bit unusual for February 2025 is that we had 201 cases of influenza. So for
Just in February, I'm sorry.
just in February.
Okay, good.
Yep. And that does not include, they now have over-the-counter tests for flu and COVID. So it doesn't include those results, obviously. But just to kind of give you a kind of idea of what this is in comparison, in 2024, we had 89 cases. 2023, we had 5 cases. 2022 to 2020, obviously people were masking and it was a bit different. There was isolation. We had 2 to 5 cases. This is just in February. 2019, we had 22. 2017, which was a really bad flu year, we had 57. And this year we had 201.
So that means people are not getting their flu shot.
Vaccinations were definitely lower this year. It was, I think, also, people were masked, people were isolating, we're getting back into how influenza used to be, but it was a bit extreme this year. I hope that, it's never too late to get your flu shot. The flu is all year round. It takes about a couple of weeks to kind of really take in full effect. I usually tell people get it later in the season, mid-October is the best time. But it's definitely, I used to work in a burn hospital. I used to work with infectious disease doctors all the time. And the one thing I used to ask them was, what can you do to really protect yourself? And across the board, it was get the flu shot. And especially as an adult, if you've ever gotten it, it really knocks you off your feet. So to give you a little bit more numbers, let's see, 242 people as of February 28th in Massachusetts have died of influenza, 7 being pediatric patients. So, it is, we are still in the very high category, and that data is based on positive cases, ER visits, and hospital stays. The good news is that we have reached a peak. The cases are coming down. Another thing I just want to bring up quickly, I know we're running a little bit late today, is measles. I know it hasn't affected Massachusetts, however, there was, I'm sure everyone's heard, the measles outbreak in Texas. And as of 2/28, 159 people have been infected with measles. 1 pediatric patient has died, and that child was not vaccinated. Out of the 159 people, only 5 were known to be fully vaccinated. There is a vaccine for measles. It's the MMR. It's a combination of measles, mumps, and rubella being German measles, and it's given in 2 doses. You can go to CVS, Walgreens, to your doctors, get it at any time. Measles, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about, measles is highly, highly, highly contagious, much more than COVID, and much more than any other infectious disease that you hear about, Ebola, smallpox. Measles is probably the most. Someone had measles and they came into this room, and 2 or 3 hours later, if you came into this room, you'd still be able to get measles, even after they've gone. Even if they weren't coughing, sneezing, it's in the air for that long. So that's how contagious it is. So I just wanted to kind of bring it out there, especially since it's going on. Please, if you haven't been vaccinated, vaccinate yourself, especially your children.
And just another word on measles.
Yes.
It can be very deadly.
Yes.
It causes brain swelling.
Yes.
It's not just a rash.
Yeah.
It's a severe illness. So.
Yeah, it is fatal. Yeah, it can be fatal.
It's not.
Yeah, and it's especially dangerous for those who are pregnant. It doesn't just affect them. It causes severe birth abnormalities to the baby. Yeah.
Big time. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just one question.
Yes.
Lyme disease, 3 cases?
3
And that's
cases.
just this month?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that high?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you usually see it, because there are some days, the frost doesn't kill all ticks. They're still out there. And so on a nice day, if you go through, the woods, you're going to get it, yeah. Or your animals. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, oh wait. Did you-
Yeah, you said there was 248 deaths from the flu in the
From the
state?
flu, in the state, yes.
During the COVID, whatever you want to call it, how many would you see in a month?
Flu or deaths?
Deaths
Deaths?
from COVID.
COVID? Oh,
Oh.
Relative to the deaths from the flu.
much
Yeah.
more.
More?
Higher COVID deaths.
I would
COVID
say
deaths
Probably
were,
about 3 times as many.
3, yeah.
Oh, there was, okay.
Yeah.
yes, but
This is-
yeah,
This is a very unusual high flu season and rate of deaths.
And
This
so
is
doesn't compare.
across the nation.
but you do see
Yes.
flu deaths for sure.
Absolutely.
Every year. It was just that it was kind of, the attention was taken off because of COVID.
Yeah.
But it is still a potentially fatal virus. And the things that they saw this year, the things that they saw this year too in pediatric patients was neurological. Flu is something that affects all your systems. It affects your respiratory. It can affect your cardio. Cardiovascular, GI. It's multi-system, and so that's what makes it so devastating.
But COVID was 3 times as,
Before the vaccines, for sure. Yeah. Yep. Especially, but mostly for the population, the elderly population, people who were 65 or older, or people who were in nursing homes, or people, definitely more deaths towards that population.
We haven't had any flu deaths in this town, in Saugus, this year, right? That was in the state, but not in Saugus.
There has been, yeah.
A couple of them.
Yeah. Saugus is not.
Not immune to.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Mr. Freilich.
I'll try to race through it.
Yeah.
So, obviously, besides the regulation and what have you, we are, just as far as the day-to-day stuff, Madam Chair. So, as far as our restaurants are concerned, so there was a sewer backup and grease trap that was clogged at Route 1 Grill House that has since been cleared. It affected the opening of, the pre-opening of Raising Cane's due to the fact that they connected to the same manhole.
Oh.
So we reached out to the owners at Grill House, and they're currently talking about scaling the inside of the trap. But the blockage has since been cleared, so there's no more backups over there. We did do the pre-operation inspection over at Raising Cane's, and obviously it's a brand new facility, so we've cleared them to bring in folks to start training.
Okay.
And they're planning on a prospective opening date of probably April, according to what the general contractor told me, so we'll wait to see what's going on there. But we did want to hold off on issuing a final permit just because, we want to make sure that we see the operation as it's going to be, not just like what the facility looks like after it's been built.
Okay.
We opened up Cilantro's over by the old, at the old Esposito's location. So that place looks fantastic. We're getting a lot of good feedback as far as the business is concerned. They were able to get rid of a probably 120-year-old oven that was in there. They had to hire a contractor to come in and basically cut it into a bunch of pieces to get it out of there. But they did a great job over there. We've also did the final inspection at Treeboo. They have not been approved for their alcohol license as of yet, but we're hearing good things about them as well. We have issued a $250 citation to the Square One Mall due to ongoing sanitary issues that we're finding in the restrooms, in the food court, on the general grounds of the area. We're seeing a lot of trash buildup, akin to what we saw a couple of years ago prior to us getting over there. So we did issue that fine this past week. We also are. We also shuttered Tokyo Hibachi for a couple of days, just due to the fact that we did see
Ethanol?
due to some pest activity that we saw. So obviously, they've had a history with us, and we're trying to make sure that they're doing the right thing over there. So we have had them hire third-party consultants as well as a third-party cleaning service to come in quarterly and just kind of make sure that the whole place has been kind of gone through, just because we've run into issues with their certification process over there. So a lot of folks don't have the ServSafe certification that they're supposed to have, so we did shutter them due to the fact that when we went in there the last time, there wasn't anybody there that was certified to operate the place. So we're going to be kind of watching that moving forward. We are conducting a plan review as we speak on Amazon Fresh, so they are planning on opening at that place where Big Y used to be.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know if I'm letting the cat out of the bag yet. No. So
Wow.
essentially what happened was they were planning on opening up several years ago. Yeah. And we went through the place, and we had conducted the pre-operation inspection, and ultimately what happened was, I believe that the technology might have been a little bit ahead of its time. So what was going on is that ultimately you go in there, it knows you're in there, so it follows you around around the place and just goes, okay, what do you got? An orange? Okay, this is an orange. And I think the calibration was a little bit off as far as the cameras and all that stuff. So they were trying to figure out weights and measures and whether or not a grapefruit was an orange and vice versa, that type of stuff.
There's going to be no
Yeah, so I think they did, but so I, we, you know.
Cashiers.
Well, yeah,
Cashiers,
so
okay.
we did go through the plan review, you know, as far as the actual floor plan is concerned, so they are planning on having some cashiers there, so it's not gonna be 100% just walk in, grab what you want, and leave kind of situation. So we're waiting to hear a little bit more about that. We haven't gotten their actual application to operate
Okay,
yet.
okay.
So we're just waiting that. We did get trash complaints at 42 Western Ave, 36 Mountain Ave, 481 Central Street, and we do have a situation at 511 Essex Street that's kind of been ongoing. We may decide to get the DEP involved in this situation just due to the fact that the amount of abandoned vehicles on the property is starting to lean towards the idea of the whole area kind of being a downgradient property status. So we're going to reach out to solid waste to find out if we can get some testing done over there. We have been litigating with this gentleman. We've been, you know, in court with him several times. I believe he owes the town about $100,000 at this point. So we're going to kind of keep working on it, but we did receive a new complaint regarding that. We got another complaint regarding 5 Birch Street, which is the old Angelo's, the old gas station at Angelo's. So we've spoken to the DEP regarding the idling, and we've spoken to the owners about operating within their bounds as far as the, you know, as far as their approved hours of operation. But ultimately, you know, I believe this place supersedes or precedes the S2 permit requirements. So I believe it's just been grandfathered. It's been operating as a gas station since the 30s, I think. So. You know, what they're doing obviously wouldn't be, I wouldn't say they'd probably be approved to do what they're doing in this day and age, but where they kind of, like I said, superseded the permitting requirements. So, like I said, we kind of passed it off to DEP just because it has to do with idling and what have you. We did get I shouldn't say we got a complaint about it, but I did notice as I was driving down Route 1 last week that there was a big graffiti tag on the new Atiti Indian restaurant. So we let the landlord know. I mean, it's technically not our you know, our regulation per se, but we did kind of forward it off to the right people just because it is on the side of a restaurant. It's a big, you know, 8x15 tag, so we want to make sure that that gets squared away. So they're aware of that. We conducted emergency preparedness drills for the Region 3D on the 5th of February and then again on the 20th of February. The 20th the drill on the 20th was a statewide drill, so we were able to access WebEOC and do everything we needed to do. So we passed that drill per se. And then the only other thing that it wasn't really a Board of Health situation, but we did want to follow up on it just because it had to do with sewer backup. So there was a sewer backup on Linfels Parkway that we were notified of. DPW had since cleared the blockage and what have you, but ultimately it basically just pushed the blockage down, you know, further down the line and essentially pressurized the line. So unfortunately the property owner was digging around under pipes with a plumber and kind of struck oil, you know. So what we're looking to do, you know, I mean, we're going to follow up and kind of monitor that situation just because there is an insurance claim with the town. But, you know, we did follow up with the property owner just to kind of find out whether or not the blockages have been cleared and they're able to, you know, kind of use their restrooms at this point. So. But other than that, that's all I really have.
Is that a residence or a?
This is at a residence,
Okay.
yeah. So, like I said, you know, that's essentially what I have for the month of February.
Well, I got one for you.
What do you got?
Collar shoes. Collar shoes.
Oh, God.
Well, so, you know, again, I've spoken at length about Carla's shoes, but ultimately, you know, we are exhausting every option. You know, I mean, they're up to date on their taxes, and, you know, any unauthorized entry, you know what I mean? I understand, like, you know, the thought of, well, what if somebody goes in there and what have you? But it's already been marked as a do not enter from the fire department. You know, it would be considered trespassing if anybody went in there. And I get that it's an eyesore, I get that it's been sitting there for a long time, and I get that there's a lot of controversy with it. So, I mean, we're looking into, you know, commercial receivership programs, we're looking into any type of regulations that inspectional services might have for dilapidated buildings. So, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, hands in the pot as far as this particular building is concerned. So, I mean, we're definitely looking to see what we can do, but like I said, as far as health regulations are concerned, it's kind of a tough sell, because like I said, if receivership was going to be on the table, they would have to be delinquent in their taxes to do so. And so they're...
So as long as they pay the taxes, we can't touch them.
Well, I mean, again, if it was in a residential area...
What if the roof blows off into the highway?
Well, I mean, you can throw every hypothetical you want at it, you know what I mean? It's like, what if it fell down, what if it caught on fire, what if a car crashed into it? You know, I mean, there's a million things that could happen with a dilapidated building, you know? So it's just a matter of, you know.
Any building.
Well, there you go. So, I mean,
It's
again,
hard.
it has been
It's
marked
hard.
as an unsafe structure by the fire department, and, you know, as it stands right now, that's.
It's a problem
that's kinda
property.
That's kind of where we're at. You know, I know that they're required to register, because they are considered a dilapidated building, so, but that's an inspectional services regulation. So, I mean, and I know that they've been trying to talk to the owner and get her to, you know, understand what the ramifications are, but ultimately, that particular piece of property now has been, you know, rezoned and rezoned again and everything. So, the only thing that it would really be useful for, if it even met the requirements for the zoning, would be like a billboard or something like that. So, I mean, I don't know that, you know, the owner would be, you know,
Unbelievable.
amenable to that, but I mean, at the same time, that's not a negotiation for the Board of Health. So I can't, I'm sorry?
The question you were talking about trash,
Yes.
if you drive down Little driveway on the side of Santoro's down to Savers,
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
there's
yep.
a brook over there.
Penny
And
Brook.
on the other side of that guardrail, I don't know whose land it is,
Mhm.
but there's more trash than you could possibly count.
We've actually had the owner of that,
Into the brook, I don't
yeah,
know.
we've actually had the owner of that property go down there many,
Well, you know-
oh, absolutely, many times we've had the owner go down to that property. And the problem is, you have Savers right there, and they deal in accepting, you know, other people's old stuff, you know what I mean? And that's what we kind of run into. We actually had a situation several years ago where there was a refugee camp down there, and they were just kind of living in that general area,
Right.
you know what I mean? So we're certainly aware of of that little annex as far as the parking lot is
Yeah, I
concerned.
just wondered if you've seen it, I was like, whoa.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
oh, yeah. So, I mean, so in my so I'll go out during the day, you know, I mean, and I tend to hit a couple of usual, you know, kind of the usual suspect spots, you know what I mean? So that's one of the stops that I go to. So, I mean, if it's starting to get there again, I know we had them down there probably 2 months ago to try to clean it up, and they did a great job. But, I mean, it's kind of a hotbed, you know what I mean? Whenever,
Oh, there's nobody, where's the sign?
yeah, well, you know what, and that's what we told the owner too. It's just like, get some cameras down there, get a no dumping sign, at least some sort of physical deterrence. You know what I mean? Even if, you know, well, we did the same thing at the mall as well. I mean, when we were dealing with that auxiliary lot that was over next to, you know, where Sears was, you know, we had all this illegal dumping going on. So it was basically like, cut people off. Like, don't let them go in there. Don't do this. And you know, you put cameras up and you do this and you do that. So essentially, that's what the Savers property is going to have to end up doing too. Is just kind of block that whole area off. You know, because it is kind of a throughway to get to AutoZone and Savers and Party City and what have you. You know.
I just was mentioning it, that's all.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
absolutely. So no, we're certainly on that as well. Yep.
Do you have a
Can I say one
question?
thing?
Sure.
You know how it's been really windy
Yeah.
these last few days? Like, so, when people put trash in a bucket, you know, and they don't have it bagged, okay? It blows all over the neighborhood. I'm cleaning up trash everywhere. I know it's windy and I look the other way, but if you put it in a bag, it's not gonna do that. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
But you can't put the recycle in a bag.
Well, you know what though, the issue again is, you know, and it's a perfect opportunity to kind of showcase the fact that the town does have an IPM, because you're supposed to have everything in tight fitting containers,
Yep.
in bags, in
Covered.
barrels that, you know,
Yeah.
have lids. So, you know, I mean, we do go through, you know, the rigmarole of going up to folks that are just throwing bags on the street that are clearly been torn open by animals and what have you. And you see, half the time, you see animals carrying stuff down the street when you go out there, you know what I mean? So we have been, you know, trying to crack down on folks that are just, you know, I mean, especially in the kind of the, you know, the frequent flyer areas, you know, so we're certainly, you know, just trying to stay on them.
Yep, good.
Yes.
Sure. Any follow-up on the Sears Automotive? Did they turn it over?
So they have, they reached out to the DEP as far as
Okay.
their emergency line. So I believe that, so I put him in touch, I put the owner in touch with the groundwater discharge permitting department over there. So I believe that they've been in talks as far as pumping the stuff out. I don't believe it has been pumped out yet, but I believe that they're just kind of trying to cross their T's as far as discharging it into a brook or what have you. But I did speak with one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff over there, Brian, you know Brian.
Yeah.
And so I did talk to him about it. So he, you know, is just going to kind of fire it back up the line to Eric Worrell and make sure that, you know, it's being taken care of properly. But we haven't had any further contact with the owner since we put the DEP in touch with him.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Any session for topic for not reasonably anticipated anticipated in 48 hours, other than this year's question. I get nothing. All right.
So, so Madam Chair, I would just again mention that, again, the public here, the public comment period is going to be open for the new amendments. So please, by all means, send me all of your comments, and we'll make sure that they get submitted to the board, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and we will bring that up again. Someone like to make a motion to adjourn to the April 7th, the next
So
meeting?
moved.
Okay, I will second, and thank you, everyone. We will see you on April 7th. Be well.